Welcome to the Igniting Hope podcast, where you will experience catalytic encouragement and practical tools to renew your mind with truth instead of lies, so you can experience transformation in your emotions, circumstances, and influence. Let's break off self-limiting beliefs together like never before.
The title of today's message is Magnify the Lord, Not This. Psalm 34, verse 3 says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together." It doesn't say, "Oh, magnify the problem with me." One of the reasons we get together with other believers is to be in an environment where we magnify, make larger God in our beliefs and our emotions. We can't make God any bigger, but we can see him bigger. When he gets bigger, our problems get smaller. The devil gets smaller. You know, we look at the story in Numbers 13 where Moses sends out 12 spies to spy out the promised land. They just left Egypt. God's will for them was to enter into the promised land immediately. Moses sends out those 12 spies. They break up into two groups of people after 40 days, bring back a different report. And it's fascinating, by the way, that two groups of people can see the exact same set of circumstances and put a different conclusion on what they see. And it tells us that circumstances almost always aren't as important as the conclusions that we place. So you got two groups. You got Joshua and Caleb who said, "We can do it." They were magnifiers of the Lord. Then you got the 10 spies. They said, it's a good place, but we are unable. And if you read the end of chapter 13 of Numbers, you will just see they magnified the problems. They magnified why they couldn't do it. The Amalekites there, the Amorites, the sons of Anak, we're like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in theirs. And they're the classic example of magnifying, not magnifying the Lord. Now, I want to give you 7 things we might have a temptation, not might, we will, that we're tempted to magnify instead of the Lord. And I think it's important to understand that we magnify things in our thinking by meditating on them, by speaking about them, by finding other people who are doing the same magnifying, and then it just gets bigger, bigger. That's why gossip, people talking negatively about others, it just it increases, and it gets blown out of proportion. So anyhow, let me tell you 7 things we're tempted to magnify and say, Lord. Number 1, the problems we're experiencing. Sometimes instead of just sharing the facts about a problem, we can talk ourselves and others right into unbelief. We shouldn't deny problems, and sometimes we need to talk about them, but it's good to avoid continually talking about how bad things are. Where there's a lack of hope, there's difficulty in finding solutions. I've been to some prayer meetings where instead of just sharing the facts, they just went on and on and on. Yep, so-and-so also died from that. And it's prayers don't seem to be working. It's only getting worse. The doctor said this. And when we magnify the problem, God gets smaller. Number 2, we're tempted to magnify our abilities and responsibilities. We all have responsibilities and important things to do, but when we focus more on what we need to do than what Jesus has done, we magnify ourselves and have made God's salvation smaller within our lives. The gospel is good news. The greater emphasis should always be on the promises and goodness of God. That's why in teaching and preaching and as we minister, if we put more focus on what people need to do than what Jesus has done, then we can be unwittingly part of the problem. And I'm not saying we don't talk about people's responsibilities, but it needs to be secondary. Third thing we're tempted to magnify is what the devil is doing. And certainly we have an enemy that we need to be wise about. But if we're talking more about Satan's attack than God's protection, we're magnifying the devil more than we're magnifying God. And God becomes smaller in our eyes. Those who are focused on spiritual warfare, we are to talk more about God's protection, more about what Jesus has done, more about the armor of God, more about the weapons of our warfare, more about how Satan has been defeated and disarmed. If we talk too much about the devil, God gets smaller. Instead of fighting darkness, spiritual warfare is about turning the light on through exalting what Jesus has done, not what the devil's doing. And again, we need to deal with the devil directly at times. I appreciate those who've got powerful deliverance ministries, but we don't magnify the devil. If we're talking more about what the devil's doing, that's a problem. Number 4, we're tempted to magnify our past. There are certainly times when we need to break agreements and tendencies from our family lines, but if we focus more on trying to fix things from the past rather than focusing on what God says we are as a new creation, then we make God smaller and our weaknesses bigger. If we're talking more about generational curses than generational blessings, maybe, let me just propose then, that could be a problem. And again, I'm not discounting generational factors, but the new creation, as we teach, and faith comes by hearing, and we come into agreement with 2 Corinthians 5:17, where the new creation, it's powerful. Number 5, our apparent disadvantages. We magnify our disadvantage. I just was listening this morning out of Jeremiah 1, where the Lord called Jeremiah to be a prophet to the nations. And Jeremiah said, but I am only a youth. He shared where he thinks he's at a disadvantage. I'm at a disadvantage because I'm young. And God says, do not say you're only a youth. Don't say that. Stop talking about what you think you're not. Stop saying what you're not and start saying who you are. You're a prophet. And the victim mindset is rooted in the belief that we are at a disadvantage because of, and then fill in the blank. Whatever, you think you're at a disadvantage, whatever I think I'm at a disadvantage because of. Could be age, could be education, could be family dynamics, could be past. Don't magnify what are apparent disadvantages. We don't deny them. We may need to manage them. We may need to get help for them with prayer, but we don't magnify them. Because as we magnify them, then God gets smaller. Number 6, we're tempted to magnify our feelings. I feel something, so it has to be true. I feel non-powerful, so I must not be powerful. I feel unworthy, so I must be unworthy. Our feelings are usually indicators of just what we believe. If we want a different feeling, we need a different belief. I love my wife's book, Victorious Emotions. It really, really gets into that. And there are certainly times to deal with the belief systems that create feelings that are working against us. But if we spend all our time magnifying our emotions and how we feel, we will make our feelings bigger than God in our minds. Number 7, last. And you can add to this list, I'm sure, but these are 7 things that we're tempted to magnify over the Lord. Number 7 is magnify the faults of others. A perfectionistic religious perspective creates a critical, fault-finding mindset that thinks poorly of other people. Thinks poorly of other people. I know there's been times where I have looked at what was wrong with others to justify what was wrong in my own life. Well, at least I don't do that. Ooh. We tend to judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our motives. Let me say that again. We tend to judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our motives. We might magnify what we see wrong with the opposite political party or in leadership over us or in our family. Those things become bigger as we magnify them, and then God seems smaller and hindered by what the people around us are doing. So let me ask you, what are you magnifying? I believe you're magnifying the Lord. These 7, the problems we're experiencing, our abilities and responsibilities, what the devil is doing, our past, our apparent disadvantages, our feelings, the faults of others, these we're tempted. We're tempted to focus on these. We're tempted to meditate on these. We're tempted to get with other groups of people who are indeed magnifying these things and gravitating together and just talk about how big they are. Hey, what's powerful and as we magnify the Lord, and these 7 are obviously just, they're great indicators, but things to be conscious of. But the greater thing is that as we magnify the Lord in worship and song and in declarations and meditation on His Word and fellowship and journaling, imagining what God's doing, imagining ourselves walking in the promises of God, imagining our prayers. As we magnify the Lord, then all of these things get smaller. They get smaller. Our problems look smaller. Our abilities and responsibilities, the focus on them gets smaller. The devil gets smaller. Our past gets smaller. Our disadvantages, our apparent disadvantages get smaller. Our feelings get smaller. And the faults of others get smaller. We don't see them as the problems that we saw them before. Magnify the Lord, not this. Hey, if you like this message, why don't you tell somebody else about it? And we're just fired up at Igniting Hope. We've got in February of 2025, I'm recording this here in January of 2024. February 2025, we have our online 2-day marriage conference seminar. It's going to be good. We have Jason and Emily Newstater are doing a course on personal revival, a 4-week course. They're part of our team, which is going to be good. We're starting our annual negativity fast, positivity feast, 40-day free event. That's coming up. Some of you are new to Igniting Hope. That's a great entry point of signing up for our 40-day negativity fast, positivity feast. You get an email every day from us of a lie to fast, a truth to feast on. You can find out all of those at ignitinghopeacademy.com, ignitinghopeacademy.com, and all other things we're having. If you sign up for our newsletter, I send out a blog every Monday that usually corresponds to the podcast that you've listened to. And also you get information on what we are doing. I'm going to be releasing another book here in the next month or two called Igniting Radical Growth in 40 Days. Matter of fact, this teaching today is a part of that book. Igniting Radical Growth in 40 Days. We've got all kinds of books and resources. You can find that at ignitinghope.com. Hey, we are here to ignite your hope. That's our assignment. Hope is the belief that the future will be better than the present, and we have the power to help make it so. Hope is an unstoppable force. I believe after love, hope is the most powerful leadership, influential quality there is. Our hope level determines our influence level, and he who has the most hope has the most influence. I believe after love, hope is the most powerful leadership quality there is. I work more on my beliefs as a leader than any other thing, any other skill. I work on my beliefs, and hope is the fruit. Hope, glistening hope, it tells me I've got great beliefs in an area. Glistening hope for my marriage, for my nation, finances. A lack of hope is the indicator that I'm renewing my mind with lies concerning a particular area, or decreasing hope is the indicator that I'm renewing my mind with lies and creating negative strongholds. Increasing hope is the evidence I'm renewing my mind with truth instead of lies and creating positive strongholds. Trust I said that right. And remember, too, the joy of the Lord is our strength. A merry heart is good like medicine. I don't need strength at the end of the battle. I need strength in the middle of the battle. You know, one thing I've noticed is that there never seems to be a convenient season to walk in radical joy. There always seems to be a reason why now or today is not a good day. It's like, wow, there has to become a time of choice where we go after it. I've got a book called Igniting Joy in 40 Days. Some of you, that might be the key, and it even gives scientific research on the power of joy, laughter, in personally and in organizations. That's really, really powerful. And so there is no convenient season. Joy is a muscle that we can build. And just two ways I love to share on these podcasts of how to increase joy. One is through thanksgiving. One is by focusing more on what we have than what we perceive we don't have. Looking back at how far we've come and celebrating that more than how far we need to go in the future to reach our ideals, to see the things changed. And so thanksgiving is so powerful. Psalm 100, it says we enter his gates with thanksgiving, and thanksgiving is a gateway into so many different things, healthy relationships, physical health, but it's also a gateway into joy as we increase thanksgiving to God and people. And then we also increase our joy and stir it up through delighting in the Lord. Psalm 37 verse 4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And the context of that is in Psalm 37 verse 4, is the delighter is delighting with unfulfilled desires, things that he or she wants to see happen that haven't happened yet, called desires. And the delighter is going, woohoo, like, Lord, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what you're going to do about this situation. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you're going to do it. My definition of joy is the childlike wonder and excitement of working with God instead of working for God. Joy is the childlike wonder and excitement of working with God instead of working for God. And this delighting piece is so important. Faith people who have hope are delighters. Faith people who don't value hope are not delighters because they unconsciously believe they can't live until something changes, until they have a desire realized, and they're waiting to live. But faith people with hope are delighters. They're living while they're waiting. They're not waiting for something to happen to delight. And it's in that living while we're waiting that's an indicator that we're going to properly steward the desire when it comes. And not delighting is maybe it's an indicator we're not ready, because you can't put new wine in an old wineskin because it'll blow it up. The blessing will actually become a problem. Oh my, that'll preach. Somebody's going to grab a hold of that. But you're a delighter. You are a delighter. So good. Hey, thank you so much. We pray blessings over you. Thank you for those who are praying for Igniting Hope Ministries. Thanks for those who've sown financially into us. Thank you for the encouragement when travel, people coming up to me saying, hey, I listened to your podcast. And if you want to become a vision partner for Igniting Hope, you can go to ignitinghope.com and find that. And if you ever want to email us at info@ignitinghope.com, just say, hey, I love this about the podcast, or you got a suggested topic. I'm not always able to get to the topics, but sometimes I do. All right. Hey, I'm going to be in Roseburg, Oregon in February. I'll be in Mexico City in February as well. All right. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening. You can be a part of our live stream of this Igniting Hope podcast by joining our social media channels on YouTube and Facebook and hitting notifications. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Help us get the message of hope out to more people by liking and sharing this podcast. Also, we have so many more incredible resources for you, including books, events, and courses on our website, ignitinghope.com. And why don't you say this concerning the message in today's podcast? I receive it, and I'll never be the same again.